It is a huge week for the Ravens. We have so much to preview and a very special guest on this episode of the Purple Rain podcast. Yes, welcome back to episode 285 of the Purple Rain podcast. Special episode, a big episode, the Derek Mason epised of the Purple Rain podcast. I mean, really that simple. Thank y'all for coming through this Thursday edition of the Purple Rain podcast. Real quick housekeeping. You can follow us on Instagram at the Purple Rain podcast. This guy right here, Instagram, X, Sutton Def. Me, Instagram, simply as10.prod, X, simply as10. Most importantly, our sponsor, Manscaped. 6 days away, might be too late. There is always maybe a New Year's gift. Code PRP, 20% off your whole order and free international shipping. But yeah, we are here to talk Ravens Steelers. So much to talk about with a very special guest. I will hand it off to Sutton, and you can lead the way.
Yeah. So like you said, I mean, listen, we're going into this, week 16 now? Jeez, man. It feels like this NFL season really did fly by. But we're going into this week 16 matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Got to have this one. Of course, we're going to get all into it. But before we do, I know you guys are reading the title right now. We do have a very, very special guest here tonight on the Purple Rain podcast that we want to go ahead and bring up. This is the Baltimore Beatdown managing editor and beat reporter. I know a lot of you guys probably already know who this is. He probably needs no introduction, to be honest with you. I've been following him for a long time. Simply has as well. He's great at what he does. This is Kyle Phoenix. What's going on, man?
Hello, gentlemen. Happy to be on. Happy to chat with you all. And hello to the Rain Gang is what I've been reading on the comments thus far. So
yeah.
Let's get into week 16 and talk about this matchup, huh?
Yes, sir. And of course, before we do that, we got to give a shout out to everybody who's watching here live in the chat. What's going on, SG? What's going on, Tamia Parker? Says Ravens Flock. We got Cam the Baptist in the house. Says hashtag PRP, hashtag Replay Gang. Yes. Giving a shout out to the hashtag Replay Gang. If you are not watching this episode of PRP 285 live and you're watching after the fact, first of all, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you may be listening to this. Welcome to the Purple Rain podcast. We are here with Kyle Phoenix today here. He is going to chop it up with us about the week 16 matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So why not? Let's just get into it, right? Let's just go ahead and get into it. Let's not miss any more words here. Let's go ahead and get into our first segment of the night. The Purple Rain Preview Ball Talk, brought to you by Manscaped, right? Let's go ahead and get right into it. You guys make sure you drop your questions down below in the chat because we will be answering questions throughout this episode. So if you have any questions for myself, Simply AS10, Kyle Phoenix, or just all of us collectively, make sure you drop them down below in the chat. But of course, we're going to go ahead and start off with the health report. This one is actually a very special one because all season long, right? Literally all season long, we have been using the health report that has been posted by Kyle Phoenix at Kyle P. Barber on X. And we just want to go ahead and just say a huge thank you to him for all the work he puts in, because half the I word reports, the health reports that I put up here would not be possible without him. There's been some days where like I didn't catch him post it and I'm like, damn, I don't have the health report today. I don't have it. And I have to, I got to get Alex to do some extra digging. So we appreciate him for everything that he does. And again, man, let's go ahead and get into some ball talk. So, Alex, go ahead and take it away. What have you been seeing from the health report from the Ravens and the Steelers that we have here? And then after Alex is done, Kyle, I want to get your assessment of the current health status of the Ravens. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with the Steelers. The big question mark for me was TJ Watt. He is going to be playing. As for who's out, George Pickens and Justin Fields, which is big. And then Deshaun Elliott, doubtful, had that forced fumble against us the first time we saw them. Then Dante Jackson and Larry Ogunjobi are both questionable. As for the Ravens, Deontay Johnson out for reasons we've talked about for the past couple of weeks. Jalen Armour Davis is out. Then questionable, Nelson Aguilar, Daniel Falele, Odafe Owe, and Rashad Bateman, who that one just popped up today. So it is pretty, both teams really banged up week 16. And we kind of talked about we wish these games were played earlier in the season because we want to see the full strength teams together. But later in the year, this game really means a lot. So teams are both banged up, no excuses.
Yeah, absolutely. What are you thinking of, Kyle, when you look at all this?
This looks about what it should be at week 16, even after coming off of a bye week just 2 weeks prior. Players are banged up. Things are mostly limited. and it's okay. It's not fun, obviously, when you see a list of names on the health report, as you gentlemen call it, and for that. But overall, you see that there are 5 players on there that don't have a status, which means they are going to be playing. You have just a few questionable, a pair that are out, and they weren't necessarily the impact guys on the list that you were expecting to even see on the field come Saturday. So everything is, for the most part, all right. There are a couple of concerns. The first being wide receiver Rashad Bateman, who did not practice after being limited yesterday because of a foot injury. And I saw him in the locker room with a boot on his foot, and that doesn't necessarily bode well. The last time we really caught that was when Arthur Millette was in the locker room with a boot, and then he was unfortunately put on injured reserve. So that's the issue with that. Otherwise, you have Fa'alele, who was limited all week with a knee injury, but you don't expect him to be missing. He's their starting right guard, whether or not people here are a fan of that or not. But nonetheless, you can expect him out there. We asked head coach John Harbaugh afterwards, when I say we, the media and the other beat reporters, if Aguilar would have enough time after being diagnosed with a concussion as to whether or not he can play on Saturday. And he said, yes, there is enough time. Harbaugh admitted that he asked the doctors if that is enough time for the potential to have Aguilar out there. And that would be a big factor, because if Bateman cannot play, then you are going to need to have depth at your wide receiver position, which would come in the form of Nelson Aguilar, Devontae Walker, and Tylan Wallace. And this is another reason that the trade for Deontay Johnson was made originally, is because the worry of Bateman or Flowers going down. But as you can see, he's not going to be playing this week, as whatever is going on behind the scenes with the Ravens is going with Johnson.
Yeah, and we have a comment here from Sam, says, in Tez Walker we trust. And you just kind of touched on it, Kyle. With Nelson Aguilar potentially not playing, somebody else is going to have to get those targets, albeit, Nelson Aguilar only commands on average 2 targets per game. But where are those targets going to go? Are they going to go to Devontae Walker? Are they going to go to Tylan Wallace, who me and Alex are personal, fans of? We really love Tylan Wallace here on this show. He's been really good for us. Catches everything, right? Just catches everything. Don't mean to get off on a tangent about Tylan, but there's going to be some guys here who get some opportunities to kind of step up in this game on our side of the football and on the Steelers side of the football. Because like we said, George Pickens, him being out is absolutely huge. It's monumental. It's monumental about, for this game, because we know the Steelers game plan is, keep it close, keep it ugly, run the ball, play good defense. And then when you're least expecting it, rainbow ball to George Pickens, right? Russell Wilson's been really good at that since he's had George Pickens, in his arsenal of receivers. And that, now that he's not going to be playing in this game, I would say it is like a kind of like a sigh of relief if you're a Ravens fan, right? Because that element of their game is kind of taken away in a sense. But I still do not doubt the Steelers' ability to make this one an ugly and make it a close game. And like Marlon Humphrey said earlier this week in the presser, he said, the Steelers and Mike Tomlin, they've just found a way to keep the games ugly, keep them close all the way to the end, and then they just kind of find a way to win and pull it out. And I remember last season, I think it was, when they did that exact same thing. I think it was the first matchup we had against them last year. They did the exact same thing. It was close all game. The Ravens weren't really playing their best ball. The Steelers weren't really playing their best ball either. It was kind of low scoring. But at the very end, what happened? Rainbow ball to George Pickens, and that was curtains. You know what I mean? So the fact that he's not playing in this game is going to be absolutely huge. And I think that the Ravens, rightfully so, should be the favorite. Not to say that George Pickens is like a bona fide, top tier wide receiver. I do have a lot of respect for the guy, but with him not being in the fold this week for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think that that's going to be huge for us. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Their stats without Pickens playing are very, very spooky and not in a good way. Very ugly. Russell, he's really one-dimensional when Pickens is in there. I trust our guys being able to cover Calvin Austin, Mike Williams, and guys of that nature. And even the tight ends, Kyle Hamilton fully healthy. I don't expect Freiermuth to have that big of a game on us. Darnell Washington, though, I'm watching him because he had that big catch from us the first time we played them. But the way this defense has been playing the past couple of weeks, I'm very, very, very pleased with how they've been, no matter who they come up against. And I am feeling good. And Pickens to me, I'm not going to give too much of a spoiler, but if he were to play and Bateman's out, it honestly sways a lot for me because even the last game they had that that moon ball to Pickens down the sideline, 40-some yard grab. That's not going to be there this week. Who's going to make that catch for them? Calvin Austin is a speedster, but physicality wise, I don't think he's make that catch one-on-one. So the way this defense is playing compared to how their offense is playing, I'm really liking our chances. And Pickens being out is honestly me ginormous for this game.
Yeah, absolutely. I also just saw that the Ravens had activated TJ Tampa off of IR recently today, and what are the odds, Kyle? What do you think are the odds? He might see some playing time.
I think we'll see him almost exclusively on special teams, but there is an opportunity maybe for him to see the field as a depth cornerback, maybe mostly if there's a player that has to go out on defense as they rotate in, or somebody gets worn down because Humphrey's taking just about every snap. Stevens and Tre'Davious White are kind of rotating in at this point, it appears, and the way that they're using a third corner instead of having Kyle Hamilton up near the line of scrimmage. But I overall wouldn't expect to see a lot of Tampa there. I mean, they still have Nate Wiggins, who is having an exceptional season as he gets more involved defensively. So I wouldn't expect to see him defensively, but on special teams, I would almost guarantee that's where he's going to be, whether it is on kickoff coverage or block, whatever it so happens to be. But overall, I wouldn't expect too many defensive snaps from Tampa.
Yeah, agreed there. And, speaking of Ravens rookies, and I want to kind of go to both of you guys on this question here that I have next. I'm looking at a few names on this list. So Adisa Isaac, Sanusi Kane, of course, TJ Tampa, all rookies for this Ravens team. Somebody asked me this question the other day when I was on somebody else's show, actually Charm City Sideline podcast. Shout out to those boys. What is your assessment of the Ravens 2024 draft class? If you had to give it a grade, right, A through F, right, what would you assess it as at this point in the season? Alex, I'm going to start with you, and then I want to go to Kyle.
I'm going to go a B to a B minus. I think your top two picks are really making their cases. Wiggins is looking really, really good, and Rosengarten is holding down that right tackle spot, which I'm not going to lie, there was a question mark for me when we got him, but he's looking very good, not allowing any pressures, I think, per PFF, I think the last game. As for the back end guys, I wasn't expecting Sneaky Kane to have that big of an impact defensively. Obviously, special teams wise, Rasheen Ali got banged up early. Was looking like he'd be a kick returner, but Tez Walker hopefully can build his way into it. But just the fact that the impact Rosengarten has looked, and I think he'll be just a cornerstone in that right tackle spot. That right there, and the Wiggins, the way he's looking at some league neighbors last week. It could obviously be higher, but those two guys are really holding it down for this draft class, and I love their potential. So I'll go B minus, honestly, B minus or C plus. I'll do that.
Okay, Kyle.
In how many picks do they have? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I believe they had 9 draft picks, and you got 2 starters out of that are certifiable right now in Wiggins and Roger Rosengarten. You get a couple others in contributors with Devontae Walker. You have contributions from Sanusi Kane, who as a 7th rounder has immediately been a rock solid special teamer. And then you have developmental picks with Rasheen, with Devin Leary, Nick Samac. I think this is a really solid class. You would like to see more out of Adisa and Devontae Walker, but the depth ahead of those guys is talented enough to where it's hard to see those snaps. And traditionally, you don't want to have to rely on rookies too much. And that's how the Ravens have been fortunate this season. Other than Rosengarten, Nate Wiggins hasn't been out there as a starting corner every snap kind of player opposite Humphrey or Stevens or wherever you have him. He is playing frequently, but not necessarily relied upon. So overall, if you can get 2 bona fide starters out of a draft class, I think that's always an excellent thing. So that's why I would go a higher B, but the difference makers on that would be you need to see more as they go on. But for year 1 grading, give them a B. You can consider B plus because you want to get at least 2 starters in a draft class. That's always a benefit. That saves the money that, if we're talking about the cap and financial impacts of it, but also they're developing at a pretty strong rate. Roger Rosengarten has certainly improved from his very first snap against Max Crosby, I believe, who stripped Lamar, if I'm not mistaken. At least he got the sack. And so to go from where he was in that awful first snap to where he is, where he's battling tooth and nail on the outside, doing well, that's exceptional. You see Nate Wiggins battling snap after snap against the likes of Malik Neighbors and having excellent routine defensive play. And his biggest gripe against has been his grabby technique at times, which was known since draft. I mean, you can accept that as certainly something that you can build upon. So when you look at it from just what we've seen this season and the exciting potential further on, I think this is a B grade for what we've witnessed thus far.
That's fair. That's fair. I did quote the other night on the Charm City Sideline podcast. Again, shout out to those guys over there. Make sure you go subscribe to them. I did. I was on record saying that I would give this draft class a C plus. And the only reason why I did give it a C plus was because I just feel like for all the stockpiling of draft picks that we do, I feel like we should be getting a little bit more ROI, return on investment, on some of these guys, right? I would want to see some of these guys get developed a little bit sooner. And Kyle brings up a good point. You know, some of these guys that we draft, they have a lot of depth in front of them, right, ahead of them. So they really do have to earn their spot. And I know certain guys, I know Devon Johnson was just saying here in the chat, says he thought Adisa Isaac would see a few more snaps with Ojabo underperforming and Kyle Van Noy needing rest. And, you know, that's just something that we can't really, as I like to call us, fanalists, right? We can't really see because we're not, you know, in the practices, we're not in the coaches' rooms and whatnot, and how they assess Adisa Isaac. But I don't know, man. I would just like to see better performance out of, like, you know, picks rounds 3 through 5. That's just me. Maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe that's just kind of like the fan in me, but I would give it a C plus, like I said, only because of the amount of stockpiling we do with draft picks. And then a lot of guys, we end up trimming fat. You know, I can look at in years past where we drafted guys who I thought was actually going to make an impact on this team, but they ended up not at all. And we ended up just kind of moving on from them. And I'm kind of left here thinking to myself, well, what's the point of drafting all these guys if we can't develop half of them, you know? And I know the draft is really just like a crapshoot. I mean, hell, look at the quarterbacks, right? Nobody knows still how to draft quarterbacks still at this point in the league, you know. But, no, that's neither here nor there. Let's go ahead and move right along here to our Purple Rain preview segment here, where we break down kind of the matchup preview here between the Ravens and the Steelers as we normally do. Let's see here. So, kind of running through this really quick. The Ravens are throwing for 245 a game, which is ranked 3rd in the league, rushing for 178 a game, which is ranked 2nd. So the offense is just good. The offense it's been efficient all season long. Yes, it's had its kind of struggles here and there, but for the most part, the offense has been really, really good. They're allowing 259 yards through the air per game, which is ranked 31st in the league. Rushing yards allowed per game, 80, which is ranked 1st. And again, this whole night and day difference between passing yards allowed a game and rushing yards allowed a game is just, it still baffles me to this day, right? And it's kind of been like that all season long, which is really, really weird. They are scoring 29.9 points a game, which is ranked 3rd in the league, and allowing 23.7 a game, which is ranked 22nd in the league. Going over to the Steelers side, they're throwing for 199 yards a game, which is ranked 24th in the league. They're rushing for about 178 per game, which is ranked 10th. They are allowing 222 through the air, which is ranked 22nd. They are allowing 94 on the ground, which is ranked 4th. So they're kind of similar to us in that regard, just kind of like on a lesser scale, right? Like they give up some plays through the air, but on the ground, they are stout. And that's just kind of like historically between the Ravens and the Steelers. You know, it's going to be a war of attrition up front. Those two the defensive line and the offensive line that's going to be a battle. They are scoring about 24 a game, which is ranked 10th in the league, and they're allowing 18.9 a game, which is ranked 6th. So, Alex, I'm going to toss this one to you first. Of course, you know how we do this here, as we have 85 people watching live. Thank y'all so much for coming out to the show. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. And another big shout out to Kyle Phoenix here for joining us here on episode 285 of PRP. So, Alex, looking at these numbers and everything I just said, right, what is going to be some of your keys to victory for the Ravens to walk out of M&T Bank Stadium on Saturday with a W?
I'm looking at their passing yards a game. That's 199, and they're losing their best receiver, their top target, their guy, George Pickens. And I want to see, how much this defense has really, grown these past couple of weeks. I want to see, hold Russ, hold this offense. I want to see a stout Ravens defensive performance. And I think this can really happen. Like I said, Calvin Austin, Mike Williams, out there. Those guys, unfortunately, they don't scare me, but I do know the Steelers and their receivers, they can always, get one on you. And then also the rushing yards allowed per game. I think there will be a heavy dosage of Derrick Henry. I know fans, want to see more. Last week you mentioned on Monday, want to see more outside runs. I thought we were saving him for this game, and I were on the MetLife turf. Not trying to run him too much, but I think we will, beat that 94 yards allowed per game. And I want to see, honestly, more Ricard snaps. I'll tell you this right now. Have him out there, some heavy packages, and really assert your dominance on this Steelers team. Big game, and yeah. So I'm just gonna hold him passing wise and control the time possession as well when you're running it. I want to see this team make a statement, honestly, on Saturday.
Yeah, totally agree there. Kyle, what is your keys to victory for the Ravens W this Saturday?
I think a lot of it is sticking to what their current winning formula has been defensively, because over the last 3 games, and you can even stretch back a few games further, since they made changes with the personnel, be it benching Marcus Williams, promoting Ardarius Washington to the starting role, having Tre'Davious White become a Raven and rotating in and out, they have completely limited explosive plays. They have turned it around on third down defense. I mean, they're allowing 29% third down conversions when about at the midway point of the season, they were allowing almost 50%. I believe it even got up to 52%. So They were allowing more third down conversions than they were denying at one point, or it was very close to that. Now, not even a third of them are they allowing. And I think that's just a testament to the personnel, and part of those decisions were from first-year defensive coordinator Zach Orr. The patience on that was wearing thin, I think, on the fan base, but this was his first time as a coordinator, and you wanted to see him get a bit faster. Like Mike McDonald started to solve it earlier on than Zach Orr did, but after a couple of disappointing losses with McDonald, he solved it with Orr. That was wearing on him for game after game, and it culminated in that Bengals game where they finally afterwards made decisions, even in a win. That was something that they had to change. So defensively, sticking with what is the winning formula right now is going to be pertinent. Offensively, this is a credit to what the Steelers do. They don't just, like, everybody jokes about the Mike Tomlin black magic and the pacts he's made with the devil, and it's hilarious, and I appreciate it, and to possibly in a degree I agree. But I think more importantly, it's just that is such just a testament to the Steelers coaching and the players that they have executing that specifically. They are a physical, turnover fueled team. And I watched the first play of I believe it was last season, might have been 2 years ago. The opening kickoff, Devin Duvernay is back, and 3 guys swung, overhand rights like they're in the octagon to try and knock the ball loose on the opening kickoff. And you're like, that's exactly how this team fights. Like, it's awesome for them. It's not great if you're the opponent, but like, just as a football fan, you got to love seeing not just big hits, but just violence and trying to create takeaways. And that's what they are. So the Steelers are based in that kind of grimy, battle-tested, we're going to drag you down into our level. You guys are playing a finesse game. You can't do that against us because we're going to beat the hell out of you. And the Ravens are a team that for a very long time and historically were also a grimy, punch you until you're just over it kind of team. They've become more finesse based because Lamar is arguably the most finesse elusive player on the planet, and they have receivers that are very similar. Zay Flowers is not a beat him up guy. He can play physically, but he's not built for it, and not in a physicality way. Just like his speed, elusiveness, agility are predicated on not being a violent type of player. Rashad Bateman can play physical, but he's not built for that. He's built for speed and acceleration. Derrick Henry is what you added to get them back into that formula to be able to punch a team in the face too. Mark Andrews is a guy that can do that. Pat Ricard, as Alex was saying, those are all physical guys that you have to go downhill on, and sticking with that is going to be a critical issue for the ways to battle against the Steelers. A great benefit is George Pickens is out, and the all too expected deep shot that he's even had over Marlon Humphrey a few times won't be there, at least in the hands of Pickens.
Yeah, love everything you said right there. I mean, and the first thing you said, I kind of want to go back to that. We got over 100 people watching live right now. Thank y'all so much for coming out to this episode 285 of PRP. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Make sure you follow Kyle Barber on socials. You can see his handle in the title of the video. If you're watching on Instagram, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you follow him on X. He's very, very active on there and always reporting some really good stuff coming out of camp from the Ravens. But yeah, like I said, I wanted to touch on what you had said in the beginning of your statement. The Steelers are a turnover-driven team. And like you said, kind of the violence that they play with is reminiscent of how the Ravens were back in, I'd say mid 2010s and prior, right? But in this one, I really do think with the Steelers being on the road, right, they are going to have an extra emphasis than they already do on turning us over, on turning the ball over from the Ravens, right? And I loved what Todd Monken did in practice the other day, right? He went up to the wide receivers, basically told the wide receiver coach, like, listen, stand aside. Let me show these boys what we really need this week. You know what I mean? And like goes over there and he's trying to really hit the ball out of guys' hands and like showing them how important it is for this team that we're playing on Saturday to protect the football. Because, I was watching that first game against the Steelers a couple of weeks ago. Derrick Henry fumbles. Like, it's so uncharacteristic for Derrick Henry to fumble, but like, why not against the Steelers? You know what I mean? So like, I feel like those are the type of things that you have to tighten up. It is a possession based game. If you lose any possessions, the game swings in the opponent's favor just pretty much every time, especially with this being such a close AFC North divisional rivalry. So I say all that to say, protect the football. I know we are a finesse team, but we have to go out there and be physical with them. And it starts up front with that offensive line. I know we've had a lot of questions about whether or not this offensive line can match the physicality of certain defensive lines, i.e. the Steelers, i.e. the Eagles, right? I think they lost both of those matchups when they played them. So it's going to be, be physical and protect the football. Those are going to be my biggest keys to victory in order for the Ravens to get a W here. Like I said, we're at home. We're at the bank. And like Roquan Smith said the other day, like, this is a check your manhood game, so if anybody's going to show up and be physical, it has to be the Baltimore Ravens. We're already down to this team a couple of games in the division right now. And we have to, man, we got to get this one. It's a must win. It is a must win. This is probably one of the biggest games in Lamar Jackson's regular season career, if I had to say. I could argue that, at this point, this is like Super Bowl window, right? We're still fighting for the division. We're fighting for seeding in the AFC, and we're fighting for confidence. You know what I mean? I think if the Ravens go out and they lose this game, they drop this one, that really, really does kind of, throw a wrench in things and our confidence to actually go into the postseason and make some real noise. Because I said this the other day on the podcast as well. The Steelers, just like the Chiefs, are one of the Ravens' boogeymen right now. And you got to get over at least one of those humps, I think, in order to carry some confidence into the postseason. So this is the opportunity. It wasn't last week against the Giants. I don't think it's necessarily next week against the Texans either. I think it really, really does start here. Of course, we're taking it one game at a time, but this Steelers game is everything for the Ravens. So like I said, protect the football and be physical up front. Those are going to be my biggest keys to victory for this one. So let's go ahead and get into some score predictions next. Make sure, again, you drop your questions down below in the live chat if you are watching live. If you're not watching live and you're part of the hashtag replay gang, hello. Thank you so much for joining this episode of the show. Make sure you drop your questions, comments, concerns, whatever you got down below in the comment section. We do like to get to those as well after the show. So let's go ahead and get started with some score predictions here. Kyle, I want to start with you this time. What would you say is going to be the final score prediction between the Ravens and Steelers? Who do you got winning, and what's the final score going to be?
I hate score predictions so much. I feel like a fraud because I don't know if I've ever got one. I don't do them a lot. I still have never got them. That was something that we had to do on certain articles and stuff in the past. And I was like, can I just talk about the game? And so my thing is I do two predictions. I do the win and the loss.
Okay.
That's what I do. because I can't, because I just hate being wrong. It bugs me. I'm supposed to be an expert, I'm supposed to know everything, so the one, let's talk about the ugly one first. If the Ravens lose, I'm expecting it to be 20 to 16. Another fumble filled, turnover issued game, and another ugly field goal miss that puts this at a 1-point game or something that could have been a 1-point game, or the Ravens could have had a greater opportunity. So that would be the ugly one. My prediction, and I do believe that the Ravens will win this game. That would be an actual, if I'm just predicting winners, I think the Ravens win this one. But if the Ravens win, I would presume it to be 26-17. I know that's a long, that's a big score difference, especially in, I believe out of the last 9 games between these, the average spread is 3.8 points. Only twice was it picked by, did the Steelers win over the Ravens by a touchdown? And I'm not a guy that likes to go too far on the spread, especially between these two teams. It makes no sense to do so. But the spread right now is like 6.5 points. And I just see the Ravens. You just think sooner or later they're going to solve it. That's what it's so strange to be somebody knowing that you're hitting yourself again. You're hitting your head against the wall, being like, it'll break eventually. It's going to break through eventually. And this is exactly it. Like, Ravens will figure out the Steelers eventually, but at home, I posted about this earlier in the week. Yes, the Ravens have lost 8 of the last 9 against the Steelers, but twice was week 18 when the Ravens already had locked up the number 1 seed and Lamar Jackson didn't play. The other 2 times over the last 4 years, Lamar was injured. So he hasn't played the Steelers at home in 4 years. Of course, they're not going to have a great record when Lamar Jackson isn't on the field. So for 4 years, we have not watched Lamar Jackson at home play the Pittsburgh Steelers. Also, as the starting quarterback of the Ravens, he's never played at home in front of a full crowd. The only time he played against the Steelers at home in the last 5 years was 2020, and they only had 2,500 fans in the stands due to COVID regulation. So fans have never been able to pack the bank and watch Lamar Jackson go against the Steelers in his entire Ravens career as a starting quarterback. So I think that's a big factor in this. And I'm not saying it necessarily like the fans are going to make such an incredible impact. I just feel like this is the moment to do so, because if the Ravens don't win this game, you have to watch the Pittsburgh Steelers celebrate a division title win on the field of M&T Bank Stadium. And I just don't necessarily see that happening. I think that, you talked about how big this game is and how critical it is. Yeah, because if you lose, you're guaranteed to not have a home playoff game, because the Steelers are winning the division in this one. And even if you win this one, you still have to go and out battle them over the last 2 weeks. So a lot is built right on here. This is the similar thing to, I'm going to go for a little bit here. I'm on a little bit of a rant, so stick with me. But I don't know who, in high school or in college, you would have like the 3 exams, and your educator would be like, all right, we do 3 exams here. We drop the lowest. And so we have those, and then we have the final. The Ravens dropped their first final. Their first 2 games of the season, they went 0-2. So they, that's it. You have to win the next ones, and you have to perform well at the end of it, because your mulligan is already gone. And their mulligan passed away when it was, you lost to the Chiefs, and then you lost to the Raiders right after. Now you have to stand up and perform, and you got to pass those final exams. And that's what they're facing now. You don't get to, rest on anything anymore because of the way the circumstances are. So I expect the Ravens to win this one. It just makes a lot of sense statistically, thematically, with everything going on the health reports, as we noted at the beginning of this show. It just seems like the Ravens could win this one.
Yeah. Alex?
Yeah, I sat back, thought about it, and I've probably been one of the more pessimistic Ravens fans, just kind of trying to keep myself back down to reality. But it's like Sam Pickens out, and I'm probably one of the bigger Bateman stands out there. Him possibly not playing really hurts our chances. With that being said, I watched Hard Knocks for the first time last night. Like what I saw from John Harbaugh, He seemed like he just seemed like rejuvenated. Like he needed that bye just as much as the players did. He seemed like a different guy. Very upbeat out there, and even that Tez Walker play, like it gave him, made him feel good. I just feel like this team has way too much pride, way too much respect, and just too much just talent out there to let your biggest rival, your bully, who's been, like you said, the boogeyman for how many years, go and win a division on your turf. That's not going to happen. I can't see it happening. I have us winning 24-20. I said on Monday, I think getting over 20 points is big for the Ravens, and I think they do it. And I think it's an ugly game. I don't think Lamar throws for 200. I think Derrick Henry has a big game, and we'll be here next Monday being like, you know what, that's why you go out there and get Derrick Henry. It's like, did we win that game with the Gus Edwards? Did we win that game last year? Probably not. But when you have a guy like Derrick Henry, I think he is a difference maker. And how I think, Tuck makes a pretty clutch kick and kind of, seals a deal for us. So give me the Ravens 24-20 in a good game on a Saturday night at the bank.
Yeah, see, my score prediction is going to be a little bit different from you gentlemen's score predictions because I think that this game is actually going to be a little bit more high scoring than usual. And here's why. With this game being a literal must win for the Ravens, it's not like if we lose this game, we're not going to the playoffs. It's not that kind of must win game. But in order for us to carry any sort of confidence, like I said before, into the playoffs, we have to win this one. I think that Todd Monken and this offensive coaching staff, they pull out some of the stops, not all the stops, but they pull out some of the stops to kind of get over the hump, right? If the game is kind of getting ugly, things like that, it's a one possession game throughout the first half or something like that. Expect in the third quarter to see some sort of creativity, something that the Steelers have probably never seen before from the Ravens, maybe even something that the Ravens might have been kind of reserving for the postseason, just to get over the hump and beat the Steelers team, because it would mean absolutely everything for the Ravens to win this one. So I'm going to go 31-26 Ravens. And I know that's lofty because, again, we can hardly score 20 against the Steelers, right? It's really hard. Hell, they beat us last time without even scoring a touchdown, so I know a lot of people think it's going to be very, very low scoring. I would not be surprised if it was, but I just think in this one, Lamar Jackson, Todd Monken, and hell, dare I even say John Harbaugh are feeling the pressure to actually put up some more points in this game and actually kind of get over the hump and not make it so ugly and close. So, Mike Tomlin can shine towards the end of the game and his defense can kind of step up. TJ Watt can be all over Lamar Jackson with, in a one possession game with 5 or less minutes left. We don't want that. I think it's going to be kind of a comfortable victory. 31-23 Ravens. That's my prediction. That's my prediction. Big Cuz 410 says 34-27 Ravens. Okay, so he's also kind of in my boat as well. That's pretty high scoring as well. So let me see. Devon says only if the Steelers forget how to tackle, bro. LOL. This is a very disciplined team, but anything can happen. Jeremiah says, well, Boz says, Mod Boz, that is. Mod Boz, the Steelers fan, that is, says like the video. Absolutely like the video. Jeremiah W says the Ravens are the better team on paper. Lamar is chasing the MV3, not ghosts of Steelers games 3 years ago. Love that. Love that. So those are our score predictions. Speaking of the whole MV3 conversation, though, because I feel like we've talked a good bit about the game, and we're gonna go ahead and go off stream here in a few minutes. So to kind of wrap it up, Kyle, I want to come to you first on this one. When it comes to the whole MVP talk, right? The current race is between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, and you let a lot of people say it, you let a lot of people tell it. Josh Allen has got this award locked up this season. Alex and I have talked about this a lot on the show. We are kind of in the same boat of we want a different type of MVP. We want a Super Bowl MVP for Lamar Jackson at this point. However, kind of looking at how the race is shaping up right now, it would make a whole lot of sense for Lamar Jackson to get his third MVP. Me personally, I think just because, he's outperforming his unanimous MVP year in 2019. So to say that Josh Allen deserves to win the award this year would mean that it should be unanimous, right? Theoretically speaking, at least in my estimation, it should be unanimous, but I don't think it's going to be unanimous. And I think that tells us everything we need to know. I think it's all politics this year. I think it's voter fatigue and not wanting to give Lamar Jackson his third MVP, not only because he already has 2, not only because they don't want to do back-to-back years with the same guy, but I think that they're taking context from the postseason and things outside of the regular season, which you're only supposed to judge in the regular season, and they're applying that to Lamar Jackson. So, Kyle, I want to ask you, what is your current, thoughts about this MVP race between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson?
Lamar Jackson has a higher completion percentage, more pass yards, yards per attempt, rush yards, touchdowns, fewer interceptions, a higher quarterback rating, a higher PFF grading, and a higher passer rating. I think it's pretty bizarre to say that this is the guy that is so far superior than Lamar Jackson because his team won a couple of big name games, which was he beat the Chiefs. You're damn right he should be credited for that. But he also beat Lions defense that is down to during that game, I believe it was at 6 of 11 of their starters, and now is at 4 of their 11 original starters.
Brutal.
I think it's pretty strange that a guy that is outperforming the other one in just about every single category, then the other quarterback is not being given his due because he has a few more rushing touchdowns. Both of them are having incredible seasons. This isn't taking anything away from Josh Allen, who hails from the University of Wyoming, which I was born and raised in Wyoming, so I have to give them credit. Even though I went to the rival school at Colorado State for my degree, not a big deal. Go Rams. But Lamar Jackson has him beat in so many other categories than rushing touchdowns because he doesn't quarterback sneak the ball and instead hands it off to Derrick Henry for 15 touchdowns. I mean, what is the issue with giving the acknowledgement? So if we also are talking about games, maybe the head-to-head game should matter, where Lamar threw for, I believe, 168 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Josh Allen threw for 180 yards, no touchdowns, and both of them lost a fumble. So if the head-to-head really matters, maybe we should bring that up. But since that was in week 4, and this is a recency bias thing, got to handle business down the stretch. Lamar looked to be the MVP early in the season. There was even talk of Derrick Henry doing so, but now it's Josh Allen is having some highlight games, so therefore he should be the one getting highlighted. But say Lamar Jackson puts a beat down on the Steelers, handles business on Christmas against the Texans, and closes out strong against the Cleveland Browns, and has also currently has the 4th greatest single quarterback rating in a single season, behind only 2 Aaron Rodgers seasons and a Peyton Manning season. So what more do you need from him? Because if we're going off of yards, it's one thing. Going off touchdowns is one thing. He has all of them. He has all of them other than the rushing touchdowns because he doesn't sneak it. He hands it off to Derrick Henry and said, that's the only difference. I think it's bizarre that pundits are just wanting to title and hand Josh Allen the MVP. And I understand Ravens fans. I understand your point of like, we don't care about that MVP so much as wanting the Super Bowl MVP, but the player that is the best on the field and the most valuable should be getting the award. And we should kind of care about it. You should care that Lamar Jackson deserves that MVP and he's outperforming it. And I understand the fan frustration when you watch as pundits get on and talking heads say, oh, it's already locked up, it's completely over, because it shouldn't be over, and there should be some obvious comparisons between the two and between anybody that's in that race. And Lamar Jackson, I think, should be leading it. If you were to tell me, ask me what my opinion is on it, it's not nearly as close as people are making it out to be, and I think it's skewed for the wrong person. It's a bit of narrative that's going on.
Yeah, agreed. Alex, what are your thoughts?
I'm right there with you. I don't want to sit here and go online and start bashing Josh Allen's season and Khalil Shakir, receiver one, over these Lamar Allen takes. But I definitely agree. I think I said it before, like he's just a different player this year. Just much better than last year, I think, much better than 2019, and just all together. And it's just like voter fatigue. I don't know what other guy that you're watching on Sundays, Saturdays, Mondays, how even Wednesdays in the NFL that's doing what Lamar's doing. And it's kind of something we've been harping on, when you get him, this offensive guy like Monkey, get him some guys around him, like he's going to be this guy. And we never really doubted him. We've always, had his back. And I just don't understand it. It's like certain shows and certain guys, just like you said, have their minds made up, and it's hard for them to change it. But I just don't see how you just are just crowning Allen in week 16. At least 3 games left. I know his schedule isn't nearly as tough as Lamar's, but Lamar last year on Christmas went out there and stomped the Niners.
Yeah.
Made the Super Bowl, like made an example of them on ESPN. So who says that can't happen again this year? So to me, obviously, I'm a Ravens fan. I think he should win it. But I know, from what we've seen from his mentality, he's looking forward, and that's something that I think he just matured as well. The maturation of him in these past couple years has been insane, and yeah, so I'm riding with him till the wheels fall off. And if he wins it, I'll be sitting there probably getting another Lamar MVP shirt, probably another Lamar MVP thing. But hopefully, it's February and we're talking about me dropping about $300 on Ravens Super Bowl merch and a ring and a new car for Super Bowl MVP. He's up there with Joseph Vincent as like who the Ravens fans just drool over.
Yeah, Joseph Vincent Flacco, 11 touchdowns, no interceptions in the 2012 playoffs and win the Super Bowl. I mean, just I can't, even still to this day, man, it still amazes me that playoff run. Hopefully we can kind of recreate something like that this year. That Giants game did give me some optimism, albeit being the Giants, right? But going back, just kind of touching on and wrapping up the MVP conversation, I really do think that, something Kyle said was very important. They judge it based on recency bias and what you do down the stretch of the season, and Alex, you kind of touched on it. Lamar Jackson, he really wrapped up the MVP conversations when it was Christmas Day. They played against the 49ers and he did his thing and, in front of the entire world. And you look at this year, Josh Allen has had a couple of different games in the past month, right? Beating the Chiefs and beating the Lions, the best team in the AFC and the best team in the NFC, both in rapid succession like that. I think that really, really did spring him forward, regardless of the stats. That really did spring him forward in the MVP race. So again, like Kyle said, if Lamar goes out there and takes care of business against the Steelers, not necessarily maybe, throwing 5 touchdowns, right? But if he goes out there and plays really well and he doesn't look like how he typically looks against the Steelers defense, then, I think that there's still a conversation to be had. And if he goes out on Christmas Day, and again, in front of the whole world on Netflix, Beyonce performing at halftime, it's going to be a lot of eyes around that game, right? If he performs on that day too, I think that's going to, help his case as well. But right now, it just doesn't look like Josh Allen is necessarily going to take a step back, only because the strength of his remaining schedule. I think they have the Patriots, and they have the Patriots twice. And then they have one other team. I can't remember who else they play. Who else do they play? It was Jets. One other bad team. The Jets. Right. Yeah, the Jets. So Jets, exactly. So yeah, I mean, it's looking like they're gonna win out, and we still have to kind of scratch and claw, and maybe the voters will look at that and say, like, okay, down the stretch, Josh Allen didn't really have any real competition. Meanwhile, here's Lamar Jackson, who played, 2 division rivals and a young and kind of inspiring Houston Texans team. They beat all them and look good doing it. I think you have to consider Lamar for MVP. Yeah. So with that being said, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap the conversation there. Again, thank you so much to @KyleP.Barber on socials. You make sure you go follow him. Kyle Phoenix, you're the man. We appreciate you for coming through.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, guys. It was a joy being on, spending some time talking ball and hanging out with you. Cheers.
Cheers. Exactly. And listen, if you want to go follow him again on socials, that's @KyleP.Barber. He's always posting updates on the Ravens. Like I said, I get a lot of my Ravens news and information from his social media accounts. So make sure you go ahead and give him a follow. We're going to go ahead and wrap there, and make sure you can go ahead and follow us on Instagram at the Purple Rain Podcast per usual. You can follow me on X or Instagram at SuttonDef, like you see down below. And then my co-host Simply AS10, you can find him on X at Simply AS10, on Instagram at Simply AS10.prod, and pretty much just anywhere at Simply AS10. You can Google him. And then, like we said, like we led the episode with, Manscaped is our sponsor indeed. And like Alex said, it may be a little bit too late to order something and get it before Christmas. But, there's other holidays around, surrounding the holiday that Christmas. And if you want to get it for anybody else, get it for yourself. Go on manscaped.com and use our code PRP. You're going to get 20% off plus free international shipping. Thank you guys so much for coming out to this episode 285 of PRP. And with that being said, I'm going to let my guy Alex take us out.
Thank you for coming through. Episode 285. We love you. We appreciate you. Enjoy the game on Saturday. I know I will. And as always, stay positive, test negative.
Yes. And never, ever, ever forget, even on the rainiest of days, to call God. It's been episode 285 of PRP. We're going to catch you guys in the next one.